Vertical farming is a concept that seems to me to be sort of future tech. I have this concept of large skyscrapers filled with lights and plants feeding cities at some point in the future. The truth is, vertical farms are here now, and they need not be giant monoliths, but can serve local communities, providing fresh produce that they might not otherwise have access to. The Opaskwayak Cree Nation in Northern Manitoba is a perfect example of that. They've built a small 2,400 square foot vertical farm that really provides access to products that they might not otherwise have access to. My name is Mike Von Massow, and this is the Food Focus Podcast. My guests in this episode are Stephanie Cook and John Terhorst of the Opaskwayak Cree Nation in Northern Manitoba. We talk about their vertical farm, how they came to develop a vertical farm, what it's doing for the community, and what it highlights to me is it's less about the farm and more about what it means in terms of food security for the community, in terms of providing access to healthy foods in the community, and redefining what it means to feed a local community. We really maybe haven't thought about vertical farms as small footprint plants that provide access to nutrients to communities that otherwise might not have access to products that fresh or to some of these products at all. And we talk about how they are targeting their production specifically to the needs of the community, where many of members of their community are diabetic or pre-diabetic, and leafy greens really help provide a foundation for a healthier diet. So to me, this episode highlights the application of this concept of technology in a very real way to make a very real impact on people's lives. And it really does sort of highlight how food production technology can change access to foods, access to healthy foods, and to sustainable diets. I think you'll find this a really interesting episode. Before we get started, I wanted to say thank you for listening. If it's your first time, I hope you enjoy it. If you enjoy the podcast, take a moment to provide us a review anywhere you get podcasts. Your reviews help others find the podcast and help us to continue to grow our audience. So thank you very much. And without further ado, here is today's episode. Stephanie and John, welcome and thanks for taking the time to have a quick chat with me.
Hi.
Hello.
So, can you tell me a little bit about the farm that you've built? Like, what exactly do you have there on Opaskwayak First Nation?
Yeah, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago we started the LED plant factory initiative. Um, has sort of an interesting origin story, but and maybe Stephanie can get into that later. But the long and short of it is we were approached by a group of Koreans. They gave us kind of an opportunity to pursue the plant factory, told us about it, and showed us some technology, and we thought it would be a really great thing for the community and for OCN. And so, yeah, it just sort of snowballed from there.
I don't have a good vision of what a small scale smart vertical farm would be. What exactly do you have up there in northern Manitoba?
Yeah, so it's a vertical smart farm. The plants there's about room for about to grow about 5,000 plants a month in a space of about 2,500 square feet, and they grow under LED lights. They don't use soil. They're immersed in a nutrient solution, and it takes about 25 days to grow a head of lettuce from seed to shelf. And Stephanie, I think you probably can fill in more detail on that.
Yeah, so basically what it is what we're calling it is next generation agricultural platforms based on the convergence of integrated technologies, basically IT, BT, ET, and etc. Vertical farms. Well, for what is a vertical farm, basically, some like you just said, what is it? There are lots of variations of it. For us, we used what they call deep culture bed methods. Yeah, so we basically have in the room 16 beds. One platform has four beds on it. So each bed is roughly about 3 feet wide by 22 and a half feet long, give or take. And yeah, each bed can grow roughly 336 plants. Again, like John said, we can grow times vary. If it's usually for leafies, it's about 25 days. But if you want to get into the more complex fruits, vegetables, we're looking at, again, like for strawberries, probably about 60 days from seed to runners to producing and flowering. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. The vertical smart farm, like I said, we've raised various types of plants in our smart farm. I don't know how other people are doing it, but from what my understanding, a lot of people are just centralizing on main leafy greens and haven't really touched base on, what I call exotic for up here, fruits and vegetables, things that aren't available or things that we've never heard of or never seen.
So what are some of those things that you're growing?
Well, in the past, like right now, we're just basically growing leafy greens, trying to find our niche, I guess you could say, where we fit, what we should produce, and basically, yeah. But in the past, we had grown up to, I think it was 105, but if you put them in categories, it was up to 70 different categories of vegetables, ranging from lettuces to herbs to different types of tomatoes. What else do we grow? Leeks, different types of onions, radishes. Things that you can't get in the north, especially say in -40 temperatures. 2016,
Yeah.
we were yeah in December of 2016 we had strawberries going into it. So what we had to do was, because leafy vegetables and strawberry vegetables require different elements in growing, and I'm pretty sure people who cultivate strawberries know that strawberries are very picky. So yeah, we had to learn about all this and had to understand and figure out how to propagate, how to pollinate, and walking through all that. It was a lot of fun working with the Koreans because they basically guided us through start to finish when we would do items and learn about new things. Because
Yeah.
no, when we first started, I thought they were crazy. I was like, "You're gonna make me grow 7 types of vegetables and artificial light using artificial intelligence, and it's there's no soil involved because I'm from an agricultural background. That's the first thing you think. Well, you need soil. Yeah, they use what we use is a polyurethane sponge, think memory foam. That's kind of like our base for planting the seed in, and it grows from there to from about a week, and then it gets planted into the system, and then it's fed nutrients on a timed cycle. The computer can be programmed, and oh my goodness, yes, there's just so many aspects of it. There's a lot, but yeah, it's
Yep.
it's amazing to work with the technology because it takes a lot of the guesswork out.
So you're growing leafy greens primarily now. Is that because what you've had the most demand for, or it's what you're best suited to grow, or do you rotate?
The reason we started going after the leafy greens is because of the high diabetic population within our community. More than 50% of our community members are diabetic, or type 2, or in a pre diabetic condition. So, my understanding of it was that leadership needed to look at the long term effects that it's going to have on the healthcare system. So, that cost of doing nothing, what is that cost going to look like, as opposed to stepping in and taking those steps to start educating your community and food and health and all the other aspects that come with diabetes, and understanding the condition.
So the vertical farm and the production decisions are really part of a broader proactive health management strategy uh, for the OCN community to say, look, we have some of these health challenges. One of the things we need are fresh leafy greens,
Mhm.
and so we're focusing that technology as part of that broader strategy.
Yeah, and that's
Mhm.
kind of why it resides under the health authority at the moment. I work for the health authority. I'm the IT health data manager, um, and so until the plant actually starts generating revenue to where it has to stand on its own as a business, we've put it under the health governance for the time being, because we're still doing a lot of research and finding what the best applications are for when we decide to scale it up to the production model.
Okay, and you're producing these leafy greens. Who's consuming these leafy greens?
So right now, most of it is actually given away, distributed to community members through different means. Stephanie, I guess you probably know better than I.
We basically, what John said is, we basically have created ourselves a Facebook page, and we have a steady stream of followers. And basically, what I've come to do is set aside days of the week where where they know that we're going to be harvesting, and have it up on the webpage and let them know, we have produce available. We're opening the door from this time to this time. You guys are free to come and pick up. When we first initially started, there wasn't much of an interest because people were hesitant. But as people slowly started realizing, oh, hey, this when we started doing more research and development on the nutrient aspect of the produce, people started coming around more and realizing, okay, well, maybe there is benefits to this, because in the beginning there was a lot of stigma attached to it. Elders were very scared of it. Now we have the current we have elder patients that come in, and they're here on the regular basis just to come and check. So that's been interesting too, like seeing people go from I'm scared of it, it's artificial, it's fake, it's to being like, when is the next harvest? When do you guys have some kale available? When can you guys try and get maybe these types of seeds and see if you can grow this? Or have you guys ever thought about trying maybe traditional, what did they say, like traditional like tobacco and things for medicinal purposes? So, people are interested now and they're asking questions, which is nice, because before a lot of people were like, but it's fake,
Yeah,
it's grown
yeah,
in.
yeah. There's been a lot of misconceptions about it, because it's like, well, how can it grow without soil and all this kind of stuff, and it looks
Yeah.
very high tech, growing under the lights. But as Stephanie
Hmm.
and I know, it's just agriculture, and it's just an improved way of growing food. And for our climate, given that we have essentially about 9 months of winter, where we can't have
Yeah.
gardens, this is a massive solution to a big problem. And so yeah, so that's why right now we're kind of switching gears into production, so that we can actually start selling direct to consumer, and then uh,
Hmm.
hopefully to businesses and stuff as well. We've had a lot of interest, and so that's where we're trying to now really ramp up to production and get things going in a different scale.
So as production grows, uh, will that mean sales within OCN or beyond OCN?
Within OCN. Well, I mean, to start, yeah. I mean, eventually we would definitely like to expand out for sure. That's something we've talked about.
And so you'll be transitioning from a free model to sort of a revenue generation model that will at least sort of allow you to reinvest and to fund maintenance and those sorts of things for the smart farm.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
essentially all the profit would grow and go into scaling up the venture to be able to expand
Hmm.
and keep food as cheap as possible and as local as possible, right? And as healthy as
Well,
possible.
well, exactly right. So if the objective is to provide healthy alternatives to uh, members of the Opaskwayak Cree Nation, uh, keeping it affordable while also having an economically sustainable smart farm, uh, I expect is a delicate dance. How big do you think that this can get? You talked about it being sort of 2,500 square feet right now. Is this double or is it 10 times as big? What is the vision in the long term?
Yeah, so I think right now we've actually just renovated a small corner of the community hall to house the plant factory, and it's roughly about 2,500 square feet. And so the nice thing about this, the way this plant factory works, is it really is, one-to-one scalable. So if you double the square footage, you double the production, right? So um, I would like to see it probably about double the size it is now. Um, but I mean, the sky's the limit, right? We never want to put limits on how big we can grow. And I think the goal too is to actually, at some point, sell the technology and help other communities develop their own community gardens, and so that food can always be as close to the end user as possible.
After you get north, what is it? North of the like the 52nd, 53rd parallel, the food, what do we call a food? It becomes a food desert essentially. Like things that are available in the city, sometimes you can't find here. Like I don't know if it's that time of the year. I don't think it's that time of the year. But example, dragon fruit. They only put out so many, 9, 10 pieces of dragon fruit for a community of 5,000. Like that's just an example, like a food desert. Because if I want those dragon fruits, say right now, well, I can't get them. I don't think they're in season, but it's still at the same time. That's just an example of one thing. Another thing was there was a international recall for romaine lettuce, and we were actually one of the only places in this region that had romaine lettuce. We had 5,000 heads, and we literally had that harvest gone within a 24-hour period. As soon as people knew we had it, it was gone. Room was empty. I've never seen product go that fast. As soon as we realized, okay, these guys have romaine lettuce, we need. People are like rushing here to, tripping over each other. I need romaine lettuce. I need. I've got plans. I got.
Yeah, wasn't that Christmas time or Thanksgiving or something
Yeah, that was Christmas time.
that people needed it? Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a couple of years ago, I think, when there were food safety issues in California based on irrigation systems, I think. And so you've got a safe local alternative that provides consistent. You were talking that looking at finding at putting this technology in other communities. Have you had other communities sort of reach out and come to see what you've got and say, is this something that'll work for us as well?
Yeah, lots.
Yeah.
And are they still waiting to see, or are some communities starting to say, no, this is something we're going to do as well?
Yeah, I think there's some communities that have tried different projects. Some are kind of waiting for the technology um, to become more, I guess, cheaper and more available. What I like to say is that there's, lots of imitators out there, which there are. There's companies in the states that are selling sort of turnkey sea can style, um, production containers, and I'm sure they work okay. But we do like to think that we were early into this. We were early adopters of this technology, and our partnership with the Koreans has really proved out to be that we really are using sort of the latest and best technology.
Hmm.
Um, there's a lot of proprietary stuff that comes directly from Korea. It's really been an amazing relationship, and I can't emphasize enough how great it's been to work with them, how educational it's been to work with them, and they've been doing this for 20 plus years. This is old news to them, and so they're definitely 10 years ahead of everybody else in terms of the technology that's being used and refining the process. So that to me was a little bit of secret sauce that our
Hmm.
plant has that others may not.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
as you grow, I'll go back to Stephanie's point about the variety. As you grow, and clearly there was some priority around leafy greens from a health perspective. Do you think more supply of the same, or does growth allow you to diversify and have a wider range of fresh produce for your community?
Yeah. Yeah. To definitely grow and diversify would be a dream come true. Like to be able to provide produce that are not available here on the Canadian food table, but we're growing it here in the north because we have done it already. We've sent produce out for nutrient analysis to Vancouver, and a few of the items that we had sent out, they basically told us when it came back was, well, we have nothing to compare this to because it's not available on the Canadian food table. So, example, crystalline ice plant. It's a diuretic. It's good for a number of health issues. Well, we were growing it here. That was readily available to our community members. Try go to your local grocery store. Try find it. It's a type of succulent. So it
Yeah.
that again opened my eyes to, okay, well, we have the opportunity to go after that market where we could grow these exotics and find something that we can pride
Yeah.
ourselves in, or a few things, because we had how many different items growing in the room, things that, like I told you, like I've never heard of before. I didn't know what a mouse melon was. I didn't know what okra was. I didn't know what bitter melons were. I didn't know what that there was like 10 different types of cucumbers. So being exposed to this opened my eyes to the amount of food that we're not exposed to on a regular because we live up so far up north.
That's really cool. And the original mandate or the original priority here was to provide healthy food within OCN. Do you guys see this as perhaps, and if you double in 25 years, could Opaskwayak Cree Nation have a smart farm that is 50 times as big as the current one and be providing fresh produce to a variety of northern communities? Or is this technology really better suited for a local market, and it's much better to take the same plant and put it into
Hmm.
other northern communities as well?
In my opinion, there's room for both. I think it should be the goal of every community to try and get one of their own plants at some point. But I mean, that could be many, many years before that happens, and not every community might um, be able to take that on. And if you think about the veggies we're getting, even in Winnipeg, you're probably looking at almost 10 days on a truck from the time it leaves California to the time it's on the shelf in the grocery store. Up north, I add another 5 days or so. You go to a community like Churchill, you're adding even more time, and then you know it's all downhill from there. So the when you actually eat this produce from our plant, it tastes like a totally different food in that it's just so fresh. It's just we haven't ever actually eaten spinach and things like that that's that fresh because we never get it that fresh. And when you put it in the fridge and you see it actually lasts 10, 15 days longer than anything you're used to, like it really just does. Like first time I took some home and put it in the fridge, I could just hardly believe it. So I think there's an advantage there, obviously locally, but also, I mean, if we were supplying nearby northern communities, it would certainly be better than any current alternative. Um, and if they want to at some point get their own or go on their own, that's even better. So I think there's plenty of room in this market for both things to occur.
Well, that's really cool. I'm excited. Hopefully, one of these days when there's less COVID and I'm back home visiting Manitoba, I could come up and walk through the plant. I'd be really intrigued. I'd be really intrigued to see it. I've taken about
Yeah.
as much time as I promised I would take. Is there anything that I should have asked you, or a point that you want to make about the farm before we wrap up, and I didn't ask you about?
Well, I guess one thing I thought of is that, well, I guess two things. So, to help paint that picture of how this plant actually looks and operates, and by the way, you're welcome to come anytime. We'll give you a tour happily. Um, it is sort of like well sealed, and there's an airlock to get in and out of it. So what that does is that prevents the introduction of germs and disease and bacteria. So we use absolutely no chemicals. We don't spray
Yeah.
these plants. We don't use any herbicide, pesticide, or fungicide. So it really is a true organic product. Um, the seeds that we get from Korea germinate 30% better than Canadian seeds, but we also have the same result when we grow our own seed. So when we talk about increasing production and whatever, part of that has to be us, our ability to grow our own seed, just because we do get much better germination. And then just sort of the final point is we also have the ability, because we control the nutrient solution, um, we can actually introduce micro and macronutrients into the plant. So if a person, for example, is deficient in vitamin K, we could add vitamin K specifically into their vegetables. So we could actually, in theory, do a custom tailor-made vegetable for a customer that way. And I think that there's a lot of potential, very sort of custom market, if you want to call it that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting, and it's whether you do it at the individual level or the community level, you could identify deficiencies in a population and say, "Oh, we should grow plants with higher proportions of this." Anything you'd like to say before we wrap up, Stephanie? Add?
No, actually, I think you just touched on the last two was the increase the specific nutrients within the plant and then the intentional growing. So this is what we've come to call it, the intentional growing of the produce so that nothing is wasted. So literally at the end of a harvest, we don't have to worry about what happens in conventional grocery stores and conventional food production. More than 50% of it ends up in the landfill. Here, that's not happening because it's ending up in other aspects of the community where it's, whether it be the soup kitchen, whether it be restorative justice students or individuals that are coming in, or schooling programs that are happening. Again, that's creating sustainability for within the community. So I believe that's a good point to make.
Good. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to come up to OCN and see it one of these days when I'm home in Manitoba. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to have the chat with me. So have a good day.
Thanks. Nice to meet you, and
Yeah.
chat later.
That wraps up another episode of the Food Focus podcast. We very much appreciate you taking the time to listen. If you just discovered Food Focus, you can subscribe anywhere you get podcasts. If you enjoy the podcast, please give us a review. It helps others find us. Before we go, I want to thank my producer, Zach, for his hard work in making each episode sound good and for his original music that helps us transition. He does the hard work and we get to have all of the fun. Thanks. Have a great day.